Master, Paramhansa Yogananda, said a number of things that were quite surprising in their implications. Swami Kriyananda, when he was with Master, wrote down many of these things and has recorded them in his book, Conversations with Yogananda, and in other places. For example, in the course of World War II, Hitler had proved himself to be, as I understand, I'm not a student of history, a brilliant general who'd made nothing but wise decisions, who was just racing all over Europe. And then he decided to open a second front in Russia, divided his forces in such a way that led to his ultimate military downfall. And on the face of it, it didn't make any sense why he would make such an infantile mistake given the way he'd been behaving until that time. Yogananda, Master, explained it by saying that the masters of India who are watching over the world were able to plant the thought in Hitler's mind that he should do that, and in that way directed things so that that transparently evil force, instead of gaining victory, lost. Master was quick to add that it wasn't as if they hypnotized him or forced him to do it, but there were vibrations of his own consciousness, of arrogance and chutzpah and hubris, that made him vulnerable to the idea that he was invincible and caused him to leave aside his better judgment. If he hadn't had those qualities, they would not have been able to connect him to that thought. Swami Kriyananda, when he talks about his own, Swami's own style of leadership, sometimes he gave the impression that he wasn't that involved in what was going on. In the development of this community, as an example, very rarely did he offer specific suggestions, very rarely. But as it progressed, there was this constant feeling among those of us who were making decisions that somehow he was making the decisions. And in fact, oddly, on one level, he'll say, I founded 9 communities, even though other people were acting. But what he said was that he would project ideas into the ether. And if you were in tune with those ideas, then you would hear them. And then you would filter them through our own understanding, and then the idea would really become one's own because one was in tune with it and then added the energy that made it manifest or made it fail to manifest. The important point you have to understand here is we're not being manipulated by these great souls who are guiding us, because at all times we're always picking up vibrations. Yogananda put it so simply. He said, thoughts are universal. They're not individual. They're just stratas of consciousness that have certain realities. We put ourselves on whatever level suits us, and then we receive that input. That's why you notice that your whole point of view can shift if your level of consciousness shifts. If you're feeling very depressed and frightened about something, and then some news comes and the news is completely different than you expect, all of a sudden no circumstances have changed, but your whole relationship to it has changed. Your whole attitude toward it and all the thoughts and ideas that come to you, because we've shifted what we're tuning into. Swami tells another story that was told to him about the master who was in charge of China and the master who was in charge of India. This was some number of years ago. And there was a consultation, and the Chinese, the Himalayan master, meaning not the king or the president, but on a much more subtle level, he says, my boys are getting restless. They're getting this aggressive energy. They want to fight, and they want to fight against India. So they said, this is how Swami told the story, and it was just told to him, that the 2 masters made a deal, that they would let the Chinese come in, but only to a certain line. And that's apparently exactly what happened. The Chinese invaded to a certain point and arbitrarily stopped at this line, and then after a while went back into China. I mean, we see inexplicably things happening all the time, and we think that it's human egos just making decisions. But we are part of a greater reality that is acting itself out according to a very complex and almost indecipherable from our point of view interplay of karmas. And the karmas of all the individuals who are involved, who are incarnating and drawn to certain situations at certain times. The quality of countries and of cultures and ethnicities and prejudices and persecutions and all of the different things that happen, these are necessary vibrations to be held on this planet, and Master says there's many planets to go to, so that when a soul is ready to incarnate and needs to be a persecuted minority, it can find a body that will cause it to be a persecuted minority. If that person has aggressive, violent tendencies and needs to be the one who's instigating the persecution for whatever cycle of karma it has to go through, then it finds a place on the planet where it can do it. If it wants to be more into willpower, it gets to be German. If it wants to be more into the heart, it gets to be Italian. If it wants to be practical and everyday, we get to be Americans. And all of us just find these different places. A friend of mine and I were talking about how individualized American culture is and how group-oriented many of the Oriental cultures and the Asian cultures are, and how little interest I personally have in that group culture, and just feel like I've worked my way through that. You know, now American is who I am. I like the Indian culture, but I like the freedom of being an American. It was a very specific and deliberate choice. And one can understand a lot about one's own karma just looking, where did I incarnate? Not just ethnically or culturally or internationally, but what kind of a family? What were the orientations? What forces pushed upon me? Now, psychology, which doesn't have reincarnation or karma, just tries to explain it all. If you have reincarnation and karma, you start from, this is who I already was, so I stepped into a circumstance. And we don't always step into a circumstance that brings out our virtues. Very often we step into a circumstance that exaggerates our faults or intensifies our suffering so that it will get bad enough for us to put out the energy to change. Because inertia is one of the other universal ideas. It's the subconscious force that says you'll be happier if you put out less energy. Just dull your awareness and then you won't feel it so much. Just take the easy way out and that will be nicer, as opposed to the superconscious that is always asking us to rise and become more. Now, I was thinking of all of this because of the politics of America, which are unfolding themselves in a most interesting way at this particular time. I feel like the politics are a symbol of the karma rather than the politics actually making our karma. The destiny of the country, the destiny of America, the destiny of the planet is a much longer rhythm than just the Republicans and the Democrats in 2016. But it is very interesting to sort of watch this play out and to wonder really what the karma of America is going to be and what the karma of the world is going to be at this point. Many years ago, I was actually reading an article from 1980 on Master's birthday, January 5th, 1980. Swami Kriyananda, his whole life, often repeated to us what Yogananda had said with great passion in 1950, which is that we are in a time of enormous change and transformation on the planet, and we are going to see many dramatic events. Yogananda thundered, as Swami described it, thundered. You don't know what a terrible cataclysm is coming. He said that in 1950. Swami said he said it on a Sunday and you thought it was going to come on Monday. You know, now all these decades have passed without that kind of dramatic shift, although we've been just inching our way, away from stability and into instability. We keep moving, but nothing that you could call cataclysmic, at least not here, and he was talking to America, has yet really happened to us. But Swamiji felt this obligation as a disciple to constantly remind us. And much of what Swami did, he did with a sense of urgency, as he put it, because you need to orient your life in a spiritual direction, because the pressures are going to become more and more intense. And if you're not already oriented in the right way, it will be too difficult at that point. To know what to do. You can't learn to swim when you're going down for the third time. You need to have some familiarity with what that's like before you start asking for swimming lessons. Well, what Swamiji described was fascinating and I think very important to understand where we stand now. He described the first aspect of it, which most of you all are familiar with, and those who aren't, I'll summarize it very quickly. The planet Earth itself goes through many cycles of more elevated and less elevated consciousness globally. The karma of the planet itself is sometimes to be a very sattvic planet, meaning very spiritually aware, very calm, very focused, very in tune with higher realities. And then sometimes the karma of the planet becomes very heavy and very materialistic. Not so long ago, 2,000 years ago, a great Christ-like figure, a great Christ figure came to this planet, and the result was that he was crucified. That was pretty bad. Yogananda was subject to lawsuits and a certain persecution and prejudice because he had dark skin, but nobody shot him. Although people are shot. Martin Luther King was shot, President Kennedy was shot. The Pope, President Reagan were shot at. They just weren't killed. So it's still happening, but we also see this enormous rising of spiritual awareness, and it's just happening in all directions, in all fields. You see this elevating of consciousness at the same time as you see this chaotic karma just acting itself out. And Swamiji made a very interesting comment. He said, what's happening now is this massive increase of energy, which is symbolized just by energy itself. First the fossil fuels, and then just all the subtle ways that people are developing energy. What they say now is your wristwatch has more computer power than the whole computer that sent the rocket to the moon. This huge room full of computers is now just in this much, and we take all these things for granted, and people just flash their phones everywhere they go now, and everything is just done just like that. And it's just the way the energy is moving, it's so much of it. Plus, there's this increased awareness that individuality and individual consciousness, that I can and must follow this inner reality and express what it is that I'm supposed to be. But also, we're still in this transition time where the form of things is what people want, and the materialistic is what people want. So I can be anything I want, but who am I? Well, I'm this body, I'm my family, I'm the furniture I own, I'm the car I drive. And so we also are seeing this stunning increase of selfish self-determination. If I can have it, I get it. I mean, we have, well, I would almost say both of our presidential candidates, really. I mean, Hillary Clinton, and I'm not going to say anything about the politics per se, but Hillary Clinton received some enormous sum of money for delivering some small talk somewhere, and her response was perfectly obvious. Well, that's what they offered me. And the hypocrisy of the whole political system, you can't even comment on it, which is everybody criticizing her would have taken the same fee if they could have gotten it. But the logic of it was so obvious. Well, that's what they offered me. Why would I stop and think whether it was even moral to take that much money? I could have it. And, the other candidate he just glories in his selfishness. I mean, that's like his charisma. Look at me. I am so powerful. I am so rich. I can do anything I want. That's what our culture values right now. That's really what the whole world values. Isn't it fascinating? It's Dwapara Yuga energy, but still twisted up in this Kali Yuga idea. So if I can be powerful, I can be more and more powerful in this egoic, materialistic way. And just get. You know, the cost of a pair of shoes or of a purse, and how many pairs of shoes do people have? The man who created the duty-free shops, a friend of mine used to work for him, and he was a well-known eccentric bazillionaire who owned one pair of shoes. And he said, because I only have one pair of feet. You know, it was very simple, like how many can I wear? I mean, India and America and every place in the world are becoming all the same now. So that's what we have. But still, a friend of mine who had recently come here from India was remarking about the families, and he was remarking about the children. He said, every child in America has his own room. Now, there's a certain value to that because that's the power of our individuality that's cultivated. I don't completely object. Every child has his own room. This is the part that he just said it, and then I'd never thought about it. And that room is full of things that belong to the child. So a child at the age of 3 lies in his crib and looks at this massive amount of stuff that's all his. And this is what's wrecking our planet. Just as simple as that. I am the only reality, and if I can get it, I want it. No connection to the whole. No thought. I am a part of all that is. And every action, every thought I take ripples out, and that vibration helps create what everyone else on the planet is thinking. And the more we push in this way, then the more the planet keeps behaving like this. And we're so bewildered. And why is it happening? We see our children in this area literally throwing themselves in front of trains. But when we have a city hall meeting about it, the first thing we can't talk about, literally expressed, no religious talk, no spiritual talk, no hint that there might be a reality greater than the ego. We're going to solve this with the ego. But of course, that's the whole problem. Because until we begin to understand we are children of God, we did not make ourselves here. How did we get here? And not one of these people, no matter how rich they are, can do anything about their hour of death. They are not in charge. No one is in charge except for the infinite. And it is our responsibility, and our meaning every soul, especially every soul who has the good karma to hear it. You know, we have a profound, both opportunity and responsibility to our own happiness, what to speak of the planet. You know, to live with everything that we can give it as part of a greater reality. Every week in our Festival of Light, this ceremony that Swamiji created, everything that he did was a very deliberate response to the suffering-producing forces that are pushing on us. And we are so buried right now under these suffering-producing forces that we don't even know it. We don't even think it odd. Just like my friend saying, and that whole room is full of things that belong to the child. Oh, well, yes, of course. Oh, wait. Maybe a 4-year-old doesn't need 15 dresses. You know, maybe a 4-year-old doesn't need 50 dolls. Maybe it doesn't help them to be forced to go outside themselves all the time. And when we do the Festival of Light, you are a part of all that is. You have a holy mission to be fruitful and multiply, and then to share with others everything you have received. And we're not just talking about tithing, which of course is always a good idea, but what have we really received? We have received the awareness of our unity in God. And do we live in accordance with that? Are we constantly aware of that? Are we ever constantly considering that whatever I'm experiencing in my heart, you are experiencing too? Whatever pain and suffering and disappointment and insecurity and fear that moves me must also move you. And what do I want? in life. Therefore, what do I want to give in life? But that's not an affirmation. That's not a rules of behavior. That has to come. And this is what our reading last week and this week was about. This has to come from an actual experience. And Swami goes on to say, it's very interesting. He says, people discuss theology and discuss dogmas and discuss philosophical ideas and the nature of the universe, and that's a necessary stage on the spiritual path. What is true, what is not true, what do these people say, what does that person say? But he says there's a different point that you reach, and that point is the point of suffering. That I can't bear what I feel and who I am inside, and I just want to know how to change it. And then we don't worry about dogmas. We don't worry even about religion anymore. We just ask, what can I do to experience that which my heart is breaking to experience? And what is it? Love? Joy? Absence of fear? A sense of assuaging of the agonizing loneliness that is the plague of our times? I mean, what do we expect? We've cut ourselves off from everything and surrounded ourselves in gripping with both hands inanimate objects that have no capacity to give us anything as a culture. And we're just spent, absolutely spent. The YMCA is open from 9 to 2 on Easter Sunday. And nobody even blinks. You know, it's not like organized traditional religion is the way of the future. It is not. That is the system of what do I believe, what is the theology, what does the leader say, what does the authority say, who can do it for me? That's not where we are. But we need to be in personal relationship to the divine. And not just in personal relationship to what makes me feel good, but in personal relationship to that power which lifts us beyond the thought of self altogether. Is it easy? No. It's so much easier nowadays, especially just to slip, into everything that's going on around us. This is war. It's always been war. It's always been a war for the individual soul. Which way will my soul go? Will my soul take the soft, easy route of a room full of things and I'll just buy more and more the older I get? And I do all this stuff in order to have the money to buy more of that stuff so I can die with all that stuff? Or are we going to go the direction that says, who am I and where does my happiness come from? We don't really ask that question until we suffer. And unfortunately, Master said, the reason that very hard times will come to this country, which really haven't hit us yet, they're inching their way there, but they haven't hit us yet, he said, is because we are so out of balance that it's going to take a very big whack to put us back in. But his words are very simple. Americans will have half as much, but will be much happier. It's a very interesting way to put it. Will it, and people ask the question, does it have to come through suffering? No, he said, not at all. There is a karmic wave that is pushing very hard that way. But individually, no. Because the power of the divine is always there. The question quite simply is, which way are we looking? Not just while you're sitting in here, but all the time. Is our heart going out as the Festival of Light asks us to, in generosity of spirit? Offer a prayer of gratitude for all that you've received and the grace to offer to others as you have received. Is that our constant prayer? If so, then that grace flows through us, and with that grace comes the joy that all of us are seeking. God bless you.